Recently, HappyLikeAWall has been under fire by a ragtag group of seemingly obsessive teenagers that operate under a group known as the ADM, the Anti-Degeneracy Movement. They are essentially an alt-right Christian commentary group that participate in performative activism against anything they deem as degeneracy. And that's not a biased perspective at all. That is my take on the situation after being exposed to all of the individuals involved for the first time, and learning as much as I could about this situation and going down the full rabbit hole. In fact, I would say I'm pretty much the opposite of biased in this situation. The only reason I found out about any of this is because I encountered genixx in a match of Dead by Daylight and had a negative experience with him. Then I encountered a diss track that had loads of allegations against him, including doxing a minor, and despite the hours and hours of content that I've watched from the entire ADM group, none of these claims have been substantiated anywhere. The ADM has done nothing to prove this. The ADM, which has milked this situation with Happy to death, taking every little interaction they can and just turning it into something it very, very clearly isn't. 4 diss tracks have been made in like the span of a month, and somehow every new diss track is worse than the one that comes before it. Something I've heard these guys say over and over again is, "We have hours and hours of evidence." Why is this statement being made when there is clearly none of that? If there were truly hours and hours of stuff, then why am I watching gameplay footage alongside the occasional still image screenshot put onto the screen? Like, the majority of the statements being made are simply just statements predicating what I can only assume is at least a partially false narrative in multiple videos, one of which being over 45 minutes long, and all of this stemming from a simple fact such as HappyLikeAWall having her other platforms linked to her YouTube channel. This is bottom of the barrel YouTube drama. If you look at Shark Hunter's channel, it's literally just copy paste the exact same drama baiting, drama farming style of the content that 9takes does. One of the videos is literally just titled "Furry Tweets NSFW," and he had to censor the term NSFW with a $sign. Is Super Smash SW so porn traumatized that even the sheer mention of anything explicit will send him into a crazed spiral? I don't know, but if that's the case, instead of trying to moderate the entirety of the internet, which is just completely unrealistic, maybe you should advocate for better search filtering or being able to filter out specific things that you don't personally want to see, rather than advocating against things in the name of anti-degeneracy. But the ADM more so views it as heresy, as they must believe they are crusaders of some sort. In the name of God, hate your neighbor. Don't believe me that they've been doing this? The ADM's intro video speaks out against degeneracy, but when it comes to citing explicit examples of what these harmful ideologies are, there is very, very little to be said. In the comments section, they even just straight up admitted to being homophobic and transphobic. Now, to be completely fair, them being transphobic and homophobic is not a shield that defends any criticisms that they may have of others that are valid, but it is a very strong show of character that detracts from their overall credibility. These are very typical alt-right perspectives with no added nuance or perspective of their own. I don't think the ADM is truly much of a movement, rather performative activism and counting on hate watchers to provide them income through views. I cannot in good faith look at comments such as these and then tie it into their escalations against HappyLikeAWall. It paints a very obvious picture of the kind of people the ADM are and represent. For example, they are alleging that HappyLikeAWall is a pedophile for calling people sweetheart. One of the accusations I find particularly difficult to understand was this argument that somehow Happy calling people sweetheart is evidence of predatory behavior. They are so porn-brained to the point that they are sexualizing this, even though it's in a group and public context. It would be very different if she were saying these things one-on-one with very clear sexual implications, but these just are not present in any of the examples they have shown. To me, it seems closer to a repetitive vocal stem, if anything. It feels very much like reaching on behalf of the ADM. There's also the fact that the situation is not as cut and dry as it's being presented by the ADM. When people like genixx and Manic Sonic have more recently recently sided with Happy. Despite formerly being associated with the ADM, there is clearly something deeper happening here. The ADM cites manipulation. They cite that HappyLikeAWall, being a 25-year-old woman, was simply manipulating Manic Sonic, manipulating genixx, being willfully ignorant and intentionally harmful. But these are claims completely unsubstantiated. The only example being that she referred to someone else in a voice call as level-headed. Saying somewhat nice things to someone else one time does not mean you are being isolated, Shark. They repeatedly bring up age differences. Now, these are a group of what I presume to be older teenagers for the most part. Gen X is 20 years old. And then contrasting the rest of the group to HappyLikeAWall being 25. Now, I don't know if you realize this, but spreading the types of narratives that you are on the scale that you are, regardless of age, will invite a response, especially when some of these videos have gotten traction, have resulted in active harm. If you are 16, to the ADM apparently, you can say whatever you want about anyone you want, because if they are too much older than you, any sign of retaliation or response from them is simply them abusing a power dynamic over you, and they will blanket statement that and segue into calling you a pedophile and whatever else they can escalate to. They also allege doxing because of a Pinterest screenshot Happy shared containing someone's first and last name supposedly. But you know, that Pinterest profile was not something you had to web scrape for. It didn't take hours and hours to find it. If someone searches for your aliases and it shows up on the first or second page of Google, then it seems like you wanted them to find it. It's your responsibility to private your accounts if you don't want them being public. If I went into my public Discord server and said my full legal name in the chat, and then someone later shares that name with others, I wouldn't be able to sit here and say that they doxed me. That's just a misrepresentation. But the ADM would have you believe otherwise. If you want to disagree though, that's totally fine. Regardless, the evidence the ADM presented shows a public Pinterest profile being shared by HappyLikeAWall. Whether sharing it is actually harassment or doxing depends on context that I don't think the video properly communicated, if there is any at all. And I glossed over this earlier, but can we please just talk about these diss tracks? Apparently this obsession with her goes back over 2 full years. 2 years of repeatedly calling someone a pedophile, repeatedly making really awful diss tracks too. Like, you would think after this amount of time they would be better at it. Their best diss track in terms of sound was the genixx diss track, and even then it's so corny. These guys are cornballs, and ironically they had a live stream just 2 days ago where they banned multiple people for calling them cornballs, alleging that they were being quote-unquote raided by Happy. Now, I think if you were being raided by her, a creator with over 350,000 subscribers, it would be substantially more than 2 or 3 people coming at you. But you have no way of confirming for certain that it was Happy who initiated these comments. There is literally no way. Because of these diss tracks, by the way, I am very, very inclined to believe that this has been less about calling something out, and now more about trying to milk one person's community and turn them against her, to crusade and profit off of it for as long as you possibly can. At what point does documenting the controversy result in you perpetuating it? The reason why I'm so invested in this situation despite not having known any of these people prior is because of the fact I've seen this type of stuff before. When I was 16, primarily, I was involved in a lot of Minecraft communities, and this exact kind of drama came very, very easily. The antagonization of HappyLikeAWall for quote-unquote spying is also just ridiculous. If there is a group of people known for coordinating and talking shit against you and trying to essentially defame and overthrow you, will you not try to get ahead of it? And regardless of the position of power or dynamic that anyone online has, there is still an emotional and mental impact. Being defamed by a minor is not very different from being defamed by an adult in an online space when the response received by the target audience is essentially the same and has the same exact impact. Given the escalation from the ADM throughout the entire situation, it's completely fair to worry about the escalation that they will try next. The cover art, by the way, of the third diss track on Happy is a literal map of the Netherlands with literal markers of where each person is, but a public Pinterest profile loosely connected to your own socials is when you're suddenly like, hands up, don't post that. Like, how can anyone look at this situation and say the ADM is completely in the right, or even in the right at all? Because so far, I'm just not convinced. There is also the claim that she is mass reporting channels because she doesn't like them. From everything we have seen, there is one in case of a channel being terminated. The ADM suggests it's because the channel was terminated. It was known for making a lot of rage bait content, and they hypothesized it would be easier to get a channel like this terminated through coordinated attacks of mass reporting. I don't see a reason to believe that mass reporting or bad faith reporting occurred at all. If a termination does happen, by the way, it is almost never because of mass reporting. It is very frequently that the channel already had policy violations that had gone unnoticed up to that point. Further, people who abuse the reporting systems have a lowered internal trust score. The likelihood of her reporting any of you to get you banned is so slim that Dream had better odds of speedrunning, and he fucking cheated. The narrative on Happy has been proposed as literal crimes. Have you ever supposed that the reason the ADM was being watched as you proclaim is because someone else involved was going to make a video of their own on the alt-right breed of degeneracy you people are involved with? I have no idea if that's the case. I don't know the logistics, but I would honestly say that the implication that HappyLikeAWall has been watching your every move for over a year is a ridiculous over-exaggeration. It is significantly more likely that there were accounts in these Discord servers and she had asked these people to periodically check for any new information regarding her, which is not a wrongdoing inherently. Wanting to get ahead of a potentially false narrative from people like this is not weird at all. It would be weird if she had told these people to do specific things and like try to get close to you and do sorts of like completely unnecessary stuff, but none of that seems to be the case at all. What struck me was how frequently relatively mundane pieces of information were presented alongside this extremely serious language: predator, pedophile, grooming, etc. And it's just being tossed around so casually. One of the last things I want to touch on is the ADM's constant use of psychological profiling and essentially trying to diagnose her exact archetype as a person and assume her exact intentions with everything she does and says. And they always paint this out to be that she has the worst possible intentions in every single situation. This is antagonization, and to an extent it's also dehumanization as well. Of course, the dehumanization has been fairly obvious. It is a trend on the internet to dehumanize larger creators. It is a trend to dehumanize the side that is older or seems to hold more authority. We start with the observation: Happy said this. Then we take what Happy said and we make an interpretation based off of it. Oh, Happy said this, so she was manipulating him. And then we end up at the psychological profiling. Happy said this, so she was manipulating him. Therefore, she is a narcissistic, manipulative predator. Notice how quickly you can take the tiniest thing and interpret it through these massive labels, literally diagnosing an entire person based off of something so small. A good example of this is Sneakers O'Toole. In the cutaway, he is told to take his sneakers off by men in suits on the sidewalk outside. In this situation, you would feel inclined to support Sneakers O'Toole. He shouldn't have to take his sneakers off. But if you think about Sneakers O'Toole as a person and his general way of thinking, I'm not taking my sneakers off, you can see that in a separate context it will be annoying. If you invited him into your house and asked him to take his shoes off so he doesn't track anything in, and he refuses, then suddenly the other party seems more agreeable. HappyLikeAWall's content has been referred to multiple times as softcore porn and overly suggestive by the ADM. Personally, I don't see it to the same extent that they are claiming to. Whether they are actually porn traumatized or something, I have no idea. But this being the entire basis for why you were originally even attacking this creator is completely senseless. There is a difference between saying, I personally feel as if this creator's content is too suggestive for me and I'm going to stay away from it, as opposed to saying, this creator is evil, trying to make you lustful and addicted to porn. And part of their claims is the linking to her Patreon and an OF page, which to be honest is such a non-issue. OF is inherently an 18+ site. The exact kind of content being sold is labeled properly in these situations. To try to argue that actual 18+ material is being targeted to minors is really just grasping at straws. After doing my own independent research on everyone involved, I have come to the conclusion that this drama is very, very much ridiculous, overblown, and gotten way out of hand. This will pass, but the overall mission of the ADM is concerning, with no one to truly know the full extent of their beliefs just yet, or what exactly they intend on primarily fighting on the internet. But I am very much in the belief that they are going to focus on the wrong things in the name of anti-degeneracy. A small group of alt-right Christian kids who want to believe they are high and mighty. This doesn't mean that I think HappyLikeAWall is necessarily a perfect individual. I do not know her. These videos from the ADM were actually my introduction to her. If you believe someone someone has done something wrong, you should document it, provide all of the evidence for everything you say to the extent that you say them, rather than taking some isolated screenshots, going across dozens of videos, assigning the worst possible motives to someone, and treating their repetition in itself as evidence. This is what building a false narrative looks like. It builds up over a long course of time to create a false sense of reliability and credibility. It's because of this that I didn't want to stay entirely silent on the matter. I reached out to HappyLikeAWall earlier. It wasn't to get comment on the situation or to understand her side. From some of the screenshots that were shared by the ADM's group, it seemed like she was very distressed, which I found concerning. The core of what I said was, there are two sides to every story, and I hope you don't feel discouraged from speaking your own. I just wanted to say something encouraging. I hope my message can be proof enough that not everyone believes the first narrative they see online. I hope you are fairly able to move forward on your own terms. There were some other things said in that message, but ultimately I did not take her side, did not take the ADM side, but after looking over everything and thinking on it, I am very much inclined to believe that HappyLikeAWall is nowhere near the villain that she is being made out to be.